Number 20. The first thing I need to address with the film Samurai Fury is that the screener given to me was in terrible resolution, something like 380p. It was so choppy that it certainly affected my enjoyment level. The movie itself had a very familiar script. This is another interpretation of Seven Samurai, which I've not only seen before, I've seen before this year. So the visual candy is sort of what's going on here. That Deprived, in a sense, really affects my thoughts regarding this film. But if we take it for what it is, the action is pretty nice. It is a bit tame, though. To show decadent corruption, sometimes you need to go further. The depravity of corruption doesn't need to be present in every scene, but having it linger around a little bit more could have worked well for this cliche tale. The sets and costumes are cool, but they are perfectly competent while not wildly transcendent like a movie such as Barry Lyndon or Rand could deliver, even though that's an admittedly unfair bar to reach. The movie is fine, but could use some flair, some some oomph, just something else beyond what is ultimately, nearly just a competent romp into a very familiar territory. Number 19. Deep in the Mountains has a frustrating series of events that conclude the tale that show that nothing was much of anything within the fabric of the story cohesively. It feels like a bit of a cheat, a bit of a hat trick, given that there is structural flaw. There is this structural flaw in it. One could just hone in on that and talk about the whole experience is unappealing. But there are good actors and a nice visual sense of things. It's by a first-time director, but long-time Jane Yimou collaborator. There is still hope for this guy if he gets direct more movies, in my opinion. And it's hard to tiptoe around things, but I don't want to reveal the concept of what is wrong with the movie because it comes in late. And even though this movie didn't thrill me, I can't ruin the experience by spelling it out all out. The movie does start off with some interesting shots that are suggestive and laid out nicely in a metaphorical fashion, but the end result cheapens what we have experienced. The scenario is nice here. I like the sets themselves and the natural world that we do see here. Some of the acting is subtle, while other performances are bolder and slightly erratic. I guess I like the whole experience. Number 18. The movie Papa is really something else. We get a familiar story that gets very traumatic almost out of nowhere and sort of stigmatizes autism, perhaps unintentionally, but in a way that may be jarring for viewers. I did like the actors. The movie's just over 2 hours. And for about 1 hour and a half, the storyline really worked for me. The sets are nice. We get a nice sense of tone for a film about a family's journey. There's a sense of some life lived here. Things at first come across very naturally, and it's as if this family dynamic comes from lived experience from the filmmakers. So the naturalism that is here should be celebrated. The harrowing turn of events just didn't convince me, and I thought it was an unnecessary turn for this film. But given that the filmmakers went down that path, there are some solid moments there. I won't say what that moment is. I've been avoiding it for this review, but it is quite something and not really earned. And it is a lot to ask that a moment such as this could be earned in any movie, in any context. When it does happen, it zaps the energy and becomes this catatonic drifting, going through some necessary gestures until the end of the movie. Maybe it doesn't take too long to do that, but at this point, I checked out. Number 17. Time to Be Strong is a very angsty coming of age tale for South Korea. A group of has-been K-pop stars hit the road, but not just for a tour, just to kind of feel horrible about themselves. Don't be too harsh with them. To lose something amazing hurts, and it's easy to be smug about it. And maybe you just have nothing in your own life to compare their experience to. Anyways, it does get to be a bit of a headache. The actors are cool, but the material is just a little grating. A bit of a one-trick pony. But there are moments of interest spread out throughout the film. The whole experience is melancholy, but there is no extreme or out of place violence. It's an emotional ride and doesn't feel too jarring out of what it's trying to be. The whole K-pop world is interesting to see. We see plenty of has-been stars here in the West having their identity crises. So why would it be any different in this realm over in South Korea? I like road movies. I like coming-of-age movies. And I like this movie too. It just wasn't an overwhelmingly positive experience. There were some rough spots on the road, but maybe there wasn't enough time to smooth it out. Number 16. Travesty is pretty cool. It's set in Mongolia, which is still a novel setting for me as a viewer. What it does offer in terms of atmosphere isn't really paid off in terms of a plot. We get a lot of people scheming and talking. It's like an elevated talking heads genre movie with a dash of mysticism, but it's far from being the ultimate contemporary cinematic experience from Mongolia. But it's cool to see the leaning in on genre from this mystical land. It does captivate for a bit, and it is a quick movie, so it's never headache inducing. The movie compared to Jimpa, though, cannot be done, or even Snow Leopard. It's cool for a romp, and it isn't quite as interchangeable as so many genre movies are for mainland China these days. It is cool without being really cool. Maybe it will be really cool for you if you haven't seen Jimpa, though. I appreciated his attitude and the intent for the kind of movie it wants to be, uh, but wanted a little bit more than what we got. It's a cool travelogue film without ever really exciting me. Number 15. I the Sun is a little baffling, but helpful. I don't know much of anything about Bhutan, but do enjoy watching the cinema, which comes out seldomly and always on the festival circuit for me. This one is very good without ever totally winning me over. It does display its local mysticism, which is sort of integral, but I didn't feel like it was seamless in conveying what it was trying to get across. The actors are quite good. They provide the local mysticism naturally. The script is maybe more the issue. The visuals are also crispy. They fit nicely in the magical realism category. They do so in that they do reflect something strange, something off a bit, but do so in a realistic context. It's natural that the film would excel mostly and be a little janky as well due to the lack of a film industry infrastructure. The movie has a doppelganger plot in a Rosemary's Baby way of not letting us know what mental health or magic. We see a lot of the local religious customs, and it doesn't veer into exoticism. Even locals will lead into the exotic in their filmmaking, presenting their own stories in order to appeal to Westerners who don't know better and want sensationalism. This movie certainly does not do that. Number 14. This movie, Gowak, Javanese Kama Sutra. It's really spicy and it's really saucy and it's really something naughty. It's like a dramatic period smut movie, but quite an easygoing smut movie. Apparently, in the 20th century and beforehand, there were these women who would have sex with teens to get them familiar with sex and sort of be a trial run for them. You can be offended by the concept, but it's a real thing, and you can't deny that there's dramatic potential with such a wild practice. So I don't see any issue with dramatizing this practice. The acting and script beyond the wild premise are fine. They can be accused of being a little local and not really good enough for people beyond Indonesia to be extremely invested in the tale. The movie is good. It illuminates us with something that seems too wild to be done today for valid reasons. There's a lot of drama with it, lies and love, which I think will be particularly interesting for the ladies. The guys out there should appreciate this if they're open-minded. The movie is a little too loud and self-important for such a sultry tale. It could have been trimmed down a bit. Then I might be a little bit more into it. Number 13. Hormone is a neat South Korean documentary which looks at a Japanese lady living in South Korea. She's third generation, and things can get a little spicy, which makes things interesting. It has a metaphorical component to it as well as a generational one. It feels as if conceptually the experience may not work, but it feels contained and does indeed work. Perhaps it is because it is fully realized. It comes from some place real. It is well-made, naturally toned documentary, as well as being a bit of a conceptually dense one. The conviction and likability of our main subject makes it all come together, I believe. If she talked in half measures and didn't believe in herself or have that deflating sense of fun, this may not work. So if you're interested in seeing nice people with an activist bent, then this documentary is proof that such a person does indeed exist in this lifetime. It is neither sanctimonious nor lacking substance. It is this rare combination that makes it work. Whatever the documentary is about becomes secondary, although it is important. Likeable people come forward here to try to right some wrongs. Number 12. To Kill a Mongolian Horse shows a promising national film industry emerging from Mongolia. They produce some sexual things sometimes, and this is further proof that more can happen in the future. It may not be exceptionally good, but it is quite good. It is picturesque, well-staged, vibe-centric, from a minimal approach, and shows us some good acting that is certainly authentic. The shots of the horse show and the landscape, and even the staging in small apartments, show off a nice visual flair that I bet Jean-Pierre Marvel could see creates a rich sense of vibes. We veer off a little bit into the misery report territory. There's some voluntary exoticization of the material, while it's understandable and not out of control. I want to see more from these creators. It feels like trial and error. The more they work, the more often they will find projects that stick. This is no Jinpa, but it's near the territory and a good sign of things to come. It's great to have the New York Asian Film Festival play films for this country, and it was a pleasure to interview a Mongolian director this year. I have never had a conversation with someone with a translator in that language before. Number 11. Montages of a Modern Motherhood reminded me that I don't know anything about parenting. It might as well be something in the movies for me. That being said, I think it's a fun film to watch. Of course, in my 30s, I know plenty of people with kids, but that doesn't mean I know the vibes of the work. The film gives me a sense of what it can be like, or at least here's a case study in how it's gone down. It probably was made by people who know the vibes. Here we see a mother really bust ass and a husband being kind of lazy, and she whines about it a lot, justifiably, of course. The baby is so cute, of course. The work must be worth it, as more rewarding than raising the future generation. Sorry. Um, the baby's so cute, of course. They must be worth it. As exhausted as it looks, I bet it is nice at the end of the day. They say there is nothing more rewarding than raising the future generation. I felt like it was hard to connect with after a while. I'm obviously not going to be alone with that sentiment. Maybe there could have been they could have cut a bit of time off because it feels like it lingers on the same points a little too long. Despite that, the attitude is really cool and the script is mostly solid. Tis an engaging tale, and it reminds me how little I know about raising a kid in this world. But heck, maybe one day that'll all change. Number 11. Bob and Bob and Ben Vampire has a high level of fun in it. It's a wacky Japanese vampire movie that starts off weird and funny and ends that way too, but with some character and tone development along the way. I kind of didn't expect it to go there, but it's not merely a cultural sugar high. It is that with a good enough script and acting to have some appeal to a Western audience that is accustomed to wild Japanese movies. This movie is fun throughout and has cool, weird violence in it. The whole film can be described as a good time, and it's nice to see the Van Helsing character in there as well. There's even a Blade 2-esque vampire character. Maybe that'll become a new go-to trope for vampire tales going forward. The vampire hunts vampires as well. The final showdown is something else. I like the violence and the strangeness, but weirdly, there's a heart here in this tale about the heartless. It may not be necessary for every telling of a vampire story, but it works for this one. The costumes are neat, the tropes are fun, the tone is light, weird and dark at once. Somehow it'll end up convincing you that nothing has to be anything, and the vampire movies can still reinvent themselves. Number 9, Daughter's Daughter is one of those dramas that doesn't present easy answers to do with family, like a Hirokazu Korida film. But this happens to come from Taiwan. There's a lot of NYC stuff here as well. The tale is tragedy laden. But the answer is what to do going forward and what is possible for the future, not necessarily what can be rectified yet. What can be done for the future, arguably, can rectify things. You see, it's just not a simple tale, but that should be good news for you. It's something to dwell on, something to ponder after the end credits have rolled, and you move on to do something else. That is as good as the scripts. This is just a top-tier drama confirmation that is doing well critically in Asia, and it could be of interest here in the West, mainly for the curious-minded, though. I think that how quickly you are to judge specific people is revealing of your own limitations for empathy. And the longer you take to dwell to come to some sort of conclusion could reveal your own true character. Number 8. Missing Child videotape is a little bit reminiscent of the early 2000s Japanese horror movies like The Grudge, Ju-on, etc. It's cool and creepy, a slow burn which really pays off in the end. Things are always on the edge, and when the occult moments occur, it is earned and also done in the same way as the film's emotional states. It leaves you wondering what is really real, and everything is questionable and disturbing. It's like when you can't initially get to sleep because you hear noises around the noise. It's really nothing out of the ordinary, but as your mind tries to quiet itself, the most minimal sounds are amplified, and you can begin to question things. I think all the actors here are compelling. What they do to one another is questionably ruthless from afar, but probably reasonable in the heights they find themselves in. It also has this trope where no one believes the principal character that what is happening is real, which is fun. A fun added touch of the familiar with this occultist tale. The use of the VHS filter here is fun. The technology to filter the VHS look has improved over the past 10 years, and it is used sparingly enough to make this an excellent minimalist slow burn creep-out affair. Number 7. On a superficial level, the movie The Stone is like Thailand's answer to Uncut Gems. It deals with appraisal of jewelry, and it has an anxiety-inducing scenario. In Uncut Gems, we have Adam Sandler being the appraiser, getting into all kinds of trouble, yet in this movie, it's a young man trying to sell his father's amulet collection for a rich Buddhist household. He learns early on that it's worth a lot, but there are a lot of brutal middlemen who either want to cut or at all for themselves. The movie ratchets up the tension throughout, and it's a lot of fun to see, a lot of fun to watch. Our main character is untainted with the gates of corruption seen here. Our moral sidekick can fully identify our our moral side can fully identify with him as a viewer as he tries to navigate this seedy yet specific world of high stakes appraisal. The cast of unsavory characters is a lot of fun, and some of them are legitimately menacing, while others would like you to believe that they are, but they're kind of goofy and ultimately forgivable alternative people. The intrigue behind the world of appraisal and the characters take a backseat to a great script that knows how to place what, when, and where, and gives you the ultimate ending to a roller coaster experience. Number 6, the movie Somebody really threw me off. In a great way, we get the tale of a meaty kid that jump into her life 20 years later, and she manages to be even more volatile. The stuff we get in the first bit, the childhood tale, is extreme. And later in life, it manages to get even more extreme. It also has one of the most effective and unsettling final shots of any movie I've seen this year. It's all earned, it's not excessive and jarring. This tale is simply dark and wretched in the best way possible. You might be too squeamish for this, or it might be exactly what you wanted. I really look forward to stumbling upon Asian movies, in this case, a South Korean one, where there's a nice mix between stylized genre violence within a really good but somewhat broody drama. I think the best part of the film is when our villain is a little girl, but the end pays off, as mentioned. It's also interesting to see we have two separate protagonists in the respective sections of the movie, with one's principal baddie. I'm not sure this will find an audience, but really hope it does. It deserves to be seen and cherished. There are enough cinematic baddies out there, so hopefully we can all get the word out. Number 5, there's something in Raven that will speak to you if you know the art life and the desperation that follows from being obscure or even just on the fringes of ordinary life. We follow a photographer who does not appreciate his position, but is not really appreciated due to cultural norms of his day. He sort of gets no respect by the people around him, and his alcoholism compounds his despair. He talks to a raven man who speaks to him in English while everyone else speaks Japanese. The pictures he takes are cool and even admired, but it's supposed to be normally for his parents and girlfriend's sake. Okay. There is some suicidal content here as well. It even starts off with an attempt. This is emotionally pretty grisly, but not unbearable. But it should be mentioned that we go there as viewers more than once. The tone may be dark, but we get a trip to the Museum of Modern Art in New York City, accompanied by Lou Reed music, so there are moments of joy and certainly brilliance within a life of despair. I think that this movie is very receptible, well acted, visually engaging, and not excessively dark for the essentially mature audience, which it seems. Number 4. There is a lot of cool and sexy intrigue in the detective keeper from Hong Kong called Behind the Shadows. If you're interested so far, know that the movie inspired me to write that and that it is inspired. Sometimes with a generic title, you just don't know. There's something behind the title, of course. It follows a detective on a case that has him quite personally involved and is not straightforward at all. It all comes together in a thrilling climax. It might not be too shocking of an ending, but you're gripped and invested as a viewer to see it all come together. It has movie pieces that are interesting. The infidelity here is done with enough psychological depth to not laugh at the characters who are adversely affected by the situation. The movie has a great bad guy, and you just keep wondering through pivotal moments as to what will occur next. The lead actor is also great in his role, a man who used to be the man who loves to talk about the glory days, but needs to stop focusing on the past and get a little bit more centered for the moment. The actress who plays the wife does an equally good job. She gets less screen time, but anchors the dramatic stakes, and by the end, we just love her as audience members. Number 3, the movie How Dare You is a lot of cute fun. It looks at one smart and sassy little girl who uses her dynamism to channel Greta Thunberg in a mischievous sort of way. She's able to sound like Greta by sounding indignant, informed, and intergenerational beef. It's all about being mad at the grown-ups for the sake of climate change and or childish mischief. She's able to get a couple of little boys who have a crush on her to hang out with her and create mischief like shooting off fireworks at meat vendors, freeing cows, clogging exhaust pipes, etc. It's all benign childish mischief, but eventually someone will have to put a stop to it. And it's not very nice to abuse 2 little boys who have a crush on you by making yourself a cult leader and them the subjects. I like the playfulness of the movie. The child actors are great. I like the cute little t-shirts to the antics. They get involved, to the fun score we get that amplifies the colorful nature of the film. It was also a mind-altering experience to see such a good child actors from Japan. Maybe I'll be able to follow their careers in the future, but this movie had me gritted throughout and even afterwards. Number two, the movie Transcending Dimensions was a revelation. I thought that perhaps it was going to be a Brody affair, something silly and disposable, but that was far from the case. It blends the world of the Yakuza with the world of cults, the occult, and shown off, but it is depicted with a grounded approach. There are plenty of trippy images, but not an oversaturation of them. It's quite unique like that. It can remind you of films like Holy Mountain in 2001: A Space Odyssey, but then be a grounded crime film just with some different imagery. The title alone sounded like it could be goofy, but it's not a goofy movie. It's an important one to me because of the great balancing that it does. It deals with the occult, but can't be accused of being pretentious and indoctrinated trash. It is clear to me that I need to see more by this director. Some of his past work is also being highlighted at the New York Asian Film Festival, and this film will also make its way to Fantasia Fest. This is the sort of revelatory film I seek, but usually just stumble into. And now I've got a new director to get into and appreciate for the future. Number one, Flower Girl should be appealing for everyone. It is spicy stuff, though. Our sassy protagonist is living a peak Filipino female life, but she makes a huge mistake. She does as a transgender woman in the washroom. She then loses her peak life because she loses her lovely vagina. She loses her boyfriend and her mental state goes downhill. So then she loses her job. It's all about accepting people for who they are and or where they are at. Refuse to do so. Land you with a bad hex. Losing a vagina is no joke for any sexually active lady, and quite a price to pay. She eventually meets a guy named Dick, who is in a similar sticky situation. Then she learns, after some half measures, how to land her vagina back, and it's just as sweet of a scenario as you might think. This movie is really funny, in my opinion, it does ultimately have a nice message. It just goes through some nasty magic to arrive at that point. Naturally, it will offend the thin-skinned. I see that's okay, though. They just don't need to seek this movie out, and the rest of us can laugh. It does have a pro-trans message, even though it is a sticky situation, and the script is, dare I say, brilliant.